So now we're off to our second recipe. And this is the mushroom tofu stroganoff. Now, this recipe gives us an opportunity to talk about the research on mushrooms. And the nutrition research is about how to make it a nutritionally relevant source of vitamin D. So just like humans, whereby our bodies can make vitamin D when we're exposed to the sun or on our bare skin, mushrooms can do a similar thing where that it can generate significant amounts of vitamin D when exposed to sunlight or ultraviolet light. And in fact, if you look closely at the grocery store, and I know Jeremy has some there, you can now find vitamin D enriched mushrooms on the market. It's probably a little bit more expensive, but if vitamin D is something that you're not getting from other foods, it's something to consider. And the National Institute of Health actually says that half a cup of these mushrooms exposed to sunlight or ultraviolet light can give you 50% of your vitamin D needs, which is about, I guess it would be about 366 international units. Now, this may vary, so look at the packages. For instance, Jeremy just mentioned that the package of the mushrooms he's using today that are vitamin D enriched, it says it meets 100% of your vitamin D needs. So look at the package to see what it says. Know that the requirements, it's 600 if you're under 70, 800 over 70. Some of us might need more, for instance, if you have osteoporosis. So look at the package, get an idea of the vitamin D that's in foods. Also talk to your healthcare team to find out, do you need to take a supplement as well? So vitamin D is something that in Canada, especially, we need to supplement in the diet, especially if you're over 50. So we're talking about foods. If you want to do supplements, talk to your healthcare team. Okay, back to the kitchen. Let's see what Jeremy's doing with these mushrooms.
All right, thanks, Daniela. Okay, so we're making, this is a take and inspiration from a stroganoff dish. I don't want to, offend the purists. It's definitely not stroganoff, but it's inspired by some of the flavors that I love. We're doing a vegetarian version of it. So we're using mushrooms, and we're going to give it this really nice creamy base with silken tofu, which is a technique that I love to use when we're trying to add a little bit of creaminess, a little bit of depth. So to start off with our mushrooms, like Daniela mentioned, look for, if you're looking for that vitamin D, I don't, we're not sponsored by this package, but it'll say it on the outside, if it's added vitamin D. Right here we have some cremini mushrooms, some white button mushrooms. You can use any other mushrooms. I have a couple oyster mushrooms, whatever you like. Important thing here is they will have dirt on them. They will often have soil on them. So it is important to wash them. I know that you hear sometimes, don't wash your mushrooms, it will make them soggy. For your button mushrooms, your cremini mushrooms, your traditional mushrooms, doesn't make them extra soggy. These are mostly all water anyways. They may absorb like 1% or 2% extra amount of water. And all that means is that you might have to cook them like 10 seconds longer, right? So I love to just use my salad spinner. I'll put it in there and I will give them a good rinse and then brush off any excess soil. So you do want to make sure you're cleaning them well. To cut the mushrooms, what I like to do, especially for this dish, I know traditionally it's sliced, but it can be challenging if you can't grip a knife really well. I actually like to take the whole mushrooms, and then you can take like the bottom of, like, use a clean jar or a bowl, whatever is easy enough to grip. And then from the stem side, just apply like a little bit of pressure and just gently crush the mushroom, and they'll like fall apart into these like nice kind of rustic but bigger chunks, which I think actually plays really well. It works, I think, a little bit better, has a better mouthfeel, because these cook down so much because they're mostly water. When they're a little bit bigger like this, you're not losing the whole mushroom. So That's what I like to do for my little tip there. Put them into a hot pan, medium-high heat. And I want to get most of the water out first before I add any extra fat, any oil, any other flavors. Okay, so once they cook down to about half their volume, I'll add a little bit of olive oil and some of my other spices. Okay, so I'm gonna add the rest of these mushrooms to my pan.
So while Jeremy's doing that, I'll just talk a little bit. Well, you probably are tired of me talking about mushrooms, but I'm just going to talk a little bit more to say that it can be a little pricier. So there are foods that are fortified with vitamin D that you can also look at especially if you're on a vegan or vegetarian diet. So plant beverages like soy, oat, and almond are fortified with vitamin D and orange juice. When it comes to the plant beverages, you might get about 84 international units in a cup. With the OJ, like if you're using fortified OJ, then orange juice, then it's about 100 international units, which is similar to a cup of cow's milk.
All right, thanks, Daniela. So we've got quite a bit of the water already out in here. This is when I will add a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon, and then stir that through. So this is where you're gonna start to get some color develop. And then to this, we'll add some onion, about quarter cup to half a cup of chopped onion. We'll throw in there. I'll add about a good tablespoon of minced garlic. Do that. And then some of the traditional spices that you might find in a stroganoff. We have some paprika, so about a teaspoon. Paprika. Some Dijon mustard. If you don't like Dijon, obviously don't add it. I do like it, so I'm gonna add a good heaping teaspoon of Dijon. The thyme, which again, optional, you can use about a tablespoon of fresh or a teaspoon of dried. Either will work. I'm gonna leave it whole in its stem. Just remember to take it out after if you're doing that. And a few shakes of the Worcestershire sauce. There we go. And that will have this really nice umami flavor going on. So stir this through. Let that cook down a little bit, and then we'll add about a cup to a cup and a half, depending. I want it to cover the mushrooms of veg stock. Okay. And just let that come up to a boil, reduce the heat to like medium low, and then we can just let that simmer away. Okay, and all those flavors will start to come together. I've done one in advance, so this is what we're looking like here. The smell is unbelievable. But to finish this is where how we're gonna incorporate the silken tofu. I'm going to blend it. You can use a regular blender. I have an immersion blender here, hand blender, so it just makes it a lot easier. Oh, and what I'll do as well, just remember to take out, like I said, those thyme stems. You didn't chop them up. So I'm going to add about a full cup of the silken tofu to my little hand blender here. And I will add about a cup of the mushrooms with that broth right in there. So I'm going to blend this with some of the mushrooms, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Okay. And then I'll take my hand blender. If you feel like it needs a little bit more liquid, because I want this to blend until it's almost the consistency of a sour cream, which you would normally see. Which you can absolutely add, by the way, you don't have to do it with the tofu. I just love adding the silken tofu here. So I'm gonna go ahead and blend this.
While Jeremy's blending that, I'll just talk a little bit about the theory from the research on peripheral neuropathy that it may not be the deficiencies of the individual nutrients alone, like vitamin D, vitamin E, or magnesium, that influence the incidence and severity of peripheral nutrition. It actually might be overall poor nutrition. What we refer to as malnutrition, because malnutrition can easily happen when appetite is poor. Treatment side effects like nausea, vomiting, sore mouth, taste changes, diarrhea, they can all affect whether you're eating well or not. So ensuring the diet is rich in protein and calories along with these nutrients is also important when side effects are present. And the silken tofu that Jeremy's using is an excellent source of protein, several minerals, including that magnesium that I talked about, and copper. And blending it like this is probably going to make it, well, I don't know what the rest of the stroganoff's going to look like, but it looks like it's a softer dish. So if you have a sore mouth, it might be easier to eat.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is what we're looking like with that pureed silken tofu and the mushrooms. I'm gonna pour it back into a pan with the mushrooms. And so this is replacing essentially that sour cream that would be traditional. Just stir that silken tofu through, a bit of a better look. Is that better or worse? Hold on, there we go. So it's like super creamy, very mushroomy, just the seasoning to taste, obviously. And then this you can serve, like it's done, really. You can serve this on rice. You can serve it on like a pasta or like a spetzel, like a traditional spetzel. I'm gonna make it really easy and serve it with a little bit of so I'm gonna add a little bit of fresh parsley on top. And I'm going to serve it with just some nice crusty bread. Keep it nice and simple. Tuck that in. Add a little bit of this delicious creamy mushrooms on top. And let's see if I can do this without spilling a little bit on my computer. That's okay, it's worth it. Wonderful.
Oh my gosh, that is my kind of food. I need to make that.